Can you feel it? Can you feel the spook? Halloween approaches, and under the glow of Manslib, we come to the Flesh Eater courts, risen from their crypts and ready to carve out a new realm for themselves like the Strygos Empire of old. It's an all-ghoul build here, about as thematic as Warhammer 2 can possibly get, mirrored by the savage Orcs of the Bloody Handz tribe on the other end of the canyon. Orctober continues with the Greenskins and Vampire counts in the Red Desert, west of Nagorod, and we're going for the fluff in this one. Now I will say right off the bat, neither army is completely atrocious. It's entirely possible to win with either one of them, but they are not what I would call hyper-competitive lists. Just a fun game to show off some underutilized units and builds. And for the armies of Morcane, the ghouls are on the hunt. A full army of famished freaks and crazy cannibals with hairy butts and bone cudgels. Nothing gets me more excited than zooming to the back of a Crypt Horror unit and taking a look at that hairy ass. Oh yeah, that's the stuff right there. Now flying overhead is a Strigoi Vampire Lord, maybe one of the weaker Bloodlines Lords, but still quite strong overall. I think that says more about how good Blood Dragons and Necrarchs and Lamians are than it does about him. But he has the Opal Amulet Ward Save, Spirit Leech, Crypt Ghoul Summons, the Ghoul King of Usharan, which is an incredibly good self-heal, and the Claws of Morcane for when he's dueling armored monsters. He is a powerful duelist, causes terror, and has some additional usefulness that comes from that shriek attack from on high, and that can really mess up high-value cav or single entities. Pretty damn good lord when mounted on a Terrorgheist, especially when backed up by another one and a fat bat Varghulf on the ground. Now this kind of build can match up decently against some low armor factions, like the Vampire Coast, who rely on zombies, if you catch an opponent off guard, but it's highly susceptible to flaming damage and to armored front lines with immune to psychology. So a Black Orc Corps or Phoenix Guard Corps, any armored infantry with staying power and mass can really mess up the Flesh Eater courts quickly. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that here. We're looking at another thematic army, not a super tryhard Greenskins build in this one. It's a Savage Orc front line with a Giant in the center, which is a really good unit actually against Vampire counts. Normally not an amazing one, but just has a lot of staying power and can beat the crap out of Terrorgheists. And back here, some Savage Orc Boar Big Guns with their 5 bonus versus large and armor piercing. With Wurrzag, the Great Green Prophet at the helm, rocking that effigy of the Git, and the Bonewood Staff, which obviously has a ton of synergy with a Savage Orc front line. So in terms of a pure melee grind, it's actually not an automatic in the Greenskins' favor. Crypt Ghouls will get dumpstered by Savage Big Guns, but they trade decently into the regular Savage Orcs, and they also have backup from Crypt Horrors. The issue is that 4 Air Boys can get rid of the monster support in a hurry, and if that's allowed to happen, the undead start crumbling pretty quick. So the best way to make it safe to land in the rear and deal with the archers is to get rid of the boar boys first. That's why we saw the Spirit Leech go down. Generally bleeds around 7 models off cav, and of course bypasses that physical resistance. So once you've conditioned your opponent to sit back with the cav to protect the archers, then you dive into the front ranks with the Ghoul King and the monsters, maybe break through that frenzy, cause the routes, and make it a bit easier for the ghouls and zombies to win their fights. Biggest issue at the moment are the 4 Air Boys. They will mess up Varghulfs, they will mess up Crypt Horrors, they'll even mess up Terrorgheists if they're able to get pinned down in the first place. So, gotta find a way to break through the front ranks quickly, and hopefully Crypt Horrors will be able to do that by dunking on them like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan. Just slamming it home from the free throw line, getting real nasty for the Savage Orcs already. So, 2 things are top priority. Keep the monsters away from the Giant, because as I said, normally not a great unit, but works quite well against the Vampire counts because it has fantastic leadership and crushes Terrorgheists or Varghulfs in a 1v1 fight. And find a way to compromise the archers, because Spirit Leech isn't going to get rid of the cav fast enough all by itself. Wurrzag has Fists of Gork, here we go, and Effigy of the Git, which he just used on the Varghulf, now pinned in place, cannot move, cannot escape, and that low armor is a huge detriment when 4 Savage Orc Air Boys are shooting into you. It's a big hitbox, and that Varghulf will drop incredibly quickly. Now, there are some ways to put pressure on the rear. Crypt Ghouls, the Feasters in the Dusk are a few of those options, but they need to move quickly, and they need to put pressure on those Air Boys immediately, or the Varghulf might not be able to survive. And it has innate regen, but that's not going to be enough to survive these salvos, so Invocation of the Heck go in the way of the Varghulf to hopefully keep it in the fight. Effigy to Git just wore off, and finally the Varghulf can run away and lick its wounds for a little bit. Now, the Strigoi Vampire Lord is unique amongst the other Vampire Lords in that he has a Crypt Ghoul summon. Crypt Ghouls are fast and they have poison, which means they are much more efficient for hunting down and tying up Savage Orc, Airboys, or other archers in an enemy's backline than the other typical summons you'll see from Blood Dragons or Lamian Vampire Ladies. So, the fact that they have that speed means that they can put a lot more pressure on those Airboys and start tying them down. Another Spirit Leech going down on another Savage Orc Boarboy Big Gun. Varghulf bouncing over, his leadership has stabilized, no longer crumbling and bounding into the right flank of the Savage Orc front line. And this, once it gets a few punches in and a few gobbles in, just sucking the blood out of that poor guy's neck. That is absolutely brutal. Might be able to cause terror, because once that frenzy has worn off, they lose their immune to psych and they start running for the hills. And that immune psychology across the entire front ranks for these greenskins is extremely important for keeping them in the fight early. Now, I saw the greenskins were maybe winning in the center, wanted to get some innate regen for my Crypt Horrors, let them come back to the fight once they're a little bit healthier, once their leadership has stabilized, and the Terrorgheists are doing exactly what they want to do, which is put pressure on everything in the rear, deal with the cavalry, and deal with these archers. Push them backwards, prevent them from firing into the Crypt Ghouls and the Crypt Horrors, which, as we know, have very low base armor and will get absolutely shish kebabbed by that focus fire. The goose is loose. And if you remember, in the last patch, their melee attack value went up. They used to have really high bonus versus large, but super low base melee attack. CA changed that to make them a more well-rounded unit, so they have higher base melee attack now, lower bonus versus large, but that's helped them, not hurt them, against the majority of targets in the game. It's made them a more well-rounded unit, one that can take on a variety of different threats and not constantly miss when it's fighting against infantry, which is pretty nice. Terrorgeist is definitely doing a great job shutting down the archers, as the Varghulf is helping to cause some terror on this side. Greenskins will certainly break in a second here. They are running now, but the Giant is still a massive problem, quite literally. And so are these Brain Burstas from Wurrzag to Great Green Prophet, which is actually a really good spell against Crypt Ghouls because they have 10 base armor. So if they get in a big blocky formation, there is kind of a blob forming there right now. It doesn't take a whole lot to send a bunch of them to the Nether Realm. The Strigoi Vampire Lord and the Terrorgeist are having a whale of a time at the moment, though. They did a great job dealing with the Savage Orc Boarboy Big Gun Cavalry, and now they have free reign to deal with the archers. Now, they're not the most efficient monsters in the game for quickly clearing out hordes of infantry, but they can still get the job done, and they can get rid of the frenzy, and they can cause the terror, and the Savage Orc Boarboy Big Guns are running. And with the cavalry gone, that means the archers are pretty much unprotected at this point. The Giant is still almost full HP. Wurrzag has not been dealt with at all, and Fists of Gork, with that leadership, with the melee attack, with the melee defense, with all the buffs coming in, they'll be flexing against Crypt Ghouls and even Crypt Horrors. And speaking of flexing, the Giant is taking these monsters of infantry to Pound Town. Wurrzag came in with the RKO from the flank. The infantry is beginning to grind through the remnants of this vampire count foot force. The Crypt Ghouls and Crypt Horrors are suffering badly at this point. The Giant is pounding them into nothing, but the Terrorgheists haven't come back over yet, and 2 Terrorgheists is probably too much to deal with for a single Giant. So Greenskins gotta get creative at this point in the battle. No question about that. Bonsport is in favor of the forces of Morcane for now. The Flesh Eater Courts are feasting indeed, but the infantry are still an issue. The big guns are still an issue, and their stat line means they can trade well into Crypt Ghouls and Crypt Horrors, especially when Wa is popped. They'll actually just completely evaporate anything that gets in their way. Big Shriek attack coming in under the baleful glow of Manslib and Morslib. That dealt a good 1,000 damage. Shriek attack from the Terrorgeist is great for wrecking large hitbox single entities. Echolocation gets a little bit nastier when Terrorgheists enter the fray, and that Strigoi Ghoul King, the Vampire Lord, is still full HP because of that regen and that Ghoul King of Ushran ability. Another Shriek attack coming in, this time not on the Giant because it was moving, trying to get rid of some of the archers. Crypt Horrors first into the fray, breaking the archers, and the Terrorgeist tying up some more of them in the rear. Those Savage Orc Airboys have not fired much of their ammunition this game. Brain Burst going down on the Crypt Ghouls as they chase off some routing troops. Varghulf is still alive, but in the center, vampire counts are looking a little bit thin. All their Crypt Horrors are in the midst of crumbling, and the Vampire Lord not going to have enough Winds of Magic to hit an AoE Invocation of Nehek. Bloody Hands tribe are beginning to rally. A lot of their forces coming back over the crest of that hill to reinforce, but they're in tatters. Vampire counts are as well, but there's no question that the Flesh Eater courts have the advantage right now. Balance bar is handily in their favor for the moment. More routing for the Savage Orc Boar Boy Big Uns, and they just wanted no part of that Terrorgeist whatsoever. They've already seen what those gnashing teeth and claws can do. Varghulf chasing after some of those routing troops, and Effigy of Dagit going down, pinned in place once more. This might be exactly what the Greenskins need. It might not be enough to get them back into the fight, but the Varghulf is crumbling out. Wurrzag attacking it from behind, and one more strike from the Squiggly Beast should drop the Fat Bat. He's gone for good, and now it's up to the Terrorgheists themselves. Crypt Horrors crumbling. The Giant is very low. It's 2 Terrorgheists and the Feasters in the Dusk. That's pretty much all that remains for this Vampire Count's army, but it looks like it should be enough. Opal Amulet, the Claws of Morkane, Ghoul King of Ushran, all of it popped, and double Terrorgoosen. Too much for a single Giant. Wurrzag not going to stick around to watch the conclusion, and he is gone. Vampire Counts and the Ruins of Morkane will take the battlefield for the Flesh Eater courts. Now, as I said, neither build was hyper competitive. You're probably not going to see armies like this in tournaments or on ladder, but big thanks to Wyvern Gaming for the match and for the experimentation nevertheless. And the Greenskins most certainly have a million ways to poop all over this Strigoi build. They can get a Black Orc Big Boss, a Giant River Troll Hag for the Mither, turtle up inside that immune to Psychology AoE, get a bunch of Black Orcs who are also immune to Psych, and smash anything that gets near the Death Star. They can go double Giant, which will match up very well against double Terrorgheists. They have a whole host of things they can do to mess up a build like this one, and they can get even meaner by getting someone like Skarsnik and his area of effect bonus versus large, some Stone Trolls for the mass thrown in for punching power, and getting surrounds off on units like the Terrorgeist when they land. Greenskin Blobs right now have a ton of killing power and staying power against the undead, and a lot of it revolves around those immune to Psychology units, like the Black Orc Big Boss, who can confer that to his more route-happy troops, or if you go for a Black Orc core, you don't have to worry about the Black Orc Big Boss as much because they already have the immune to Psychology. So, realistically, this kind of Crypt Ghoul build is not a particularly strong army. It suffers heavily against high armor, it suffers heavily against flaming damage, but it can do okay against low armor factions like the Vampire Coast, where Crypt Ghouls will actually do well against zombies, and it can also do well against armies like we saw here. Savage Orcs rely on physical resistance, not on armor, and we saw the Crypt Ghouls actually do okay in those melee engagements. They had a pretty decent time. So, always fun to unleash the thematic builds. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.